Lucky to work for a great group of people you really believe in?
Find yourself making an impact?
Technology is a river that flows through every aspect of an organization, and today is different. We put ourselves and our organizations literally at risk of complete destruction every single time we get online. One click, one distraction is all it takes. Hi, Cybercrime Junkies. This is your host, David Morrow, along with co-host Mark Mosher.
Come join us as we explore our research into these blockbuster true crime stories,
along with interviews of leaders who built and protect great brands. Well, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. I'm your host, David Morrow. In the studio today is our good friend, Gary Ruddell. Gary, welcome to the studio. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing very well. So Gary is a former military intelligence operations specialist turned hacker and threat intelligence specialist who has a phenomenal YouTube channel. We will have the link in the show notes, as well as a very insightful newsletter. That link will also be in the show notes. Decades of experience across government and finance sectors, and on a mission to train 25,000 people in cybersecurity. Today, we're going to talk about exclusive new lessons in ransomware, some of the ransomware gangs, some of the latest. We're going to talk about some true cybercrime stories. Gary has done some deep dives into some really interesting old school ones. We're going to touch on that. Then we're going to touch on breaking into cybersecurity. You've got a great story, and you've got some great insight and some help, and we want to walk that through. So let's have the audience kind of get to know you a little bit. You started in the Navy, right? Back in 2005?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, joined the Navy as a communications and information systems specialist. That's the UK Navy, by the way.
Right.
Some people hear my accent and think I'm maybe American or some weird Northern Irish accent. But yeah, I joined the Royal Navy in the CIS branch, as it's shortened to, and that was sort of doing all of the very old school now, looking back on it.
Well,
old cryptography.
Yeah,
like we had computers, but we didn't have computers really, and all the cryptography was done on these massive, big, long machines with cogs and things on the inside of them, and you used to have these ticker tapes, pieces of tape with holes all across it, and you used to pull that through a little light scanner thing to do your crypto for the day. It was a totally different era, and it's weird that that's in my lifetime. Like, that feels like very Cold War era stuff. Right. There is another part of the Navy.
2005 when you joined, it was pre-iPhone, right?
Yeah, true.
Like, set the stage. Like, that was, people were not walking around with encyclopedias and enough compute power that could have run an airport back in the 70s in their pocket at that time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there is another part of the Navy that's also communications related. I wasn't in that one. That's the communications technicians branch. Those are sort of like the hackers of the Navy.
Interesting.
They break into like communication signals and things like that. But I didn't do any of that. I just, used to look at those guys and think, that's where the action's at.
Someday, I got to shift over there. So then, that was 2005. A few years later, you joined the intelligence group there?
I moved across to the Army's intelligence wing. So that's called the Intelligence Corps within the British Army. And that was good. I did 4 years in the Navy. Did anybody that's been in the Navy, and been overseas, like in the Middle East or whatever. Yeah, you stop off in every country on the way, loads of nice runs ashore. But I wanted to kind of get on the ground and see like what was going on. So yeah, that was kind of why I joined the Intelligence Corps in the Army.
What all did you do? What type of assignments, or what type of? Let's start with the assignments. What type of assignments were you focused on there, without disclosing any state secrets, naturally?
Yeah, I guess I just see a few people in the chat saying the audio is chopping. I've just changed it off of high res. Let me know if that's better.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
better.
I'm not on Bluetooth. I'm wired in.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so the assignments typically that you would do in the intelligence community are gathering information and then processing that into intelligence to defend the nation. Ultimately, that's the sort of boilerplate statement. What that means in practice is, like I was in Afghanistan in 2011. Going and speaking with people, getting to know the areas, getting to know the issues at hand, understanding the players, learning the ground. It's pretty well known that we use airplanes and cameras and things to like study the ground, but like really getting to learn like every hole in the road. So the next day when you walk out of your base and a hole is gone, you're thinking, hold on, why is that hole gone?
Why,
Is there
why
a
is that?
bomb in that hole?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's intelligence work, right? It's not Aston Martins and silenced pistols. It's data. Give me data, and I will give you intelligence at the end of it.
Right. Ways to forecast what the future might hold, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What it's all
Like
about.
we had some good successes with intelligence. Obviously there's a whole aspect of it where you're trying to capture high value targets and things like that. If you're wondering what that means, think about how in the movie Zero Dark 30, the SEAL teams go and get Bin Laden. That's like right at the very sharp edge of that. It doesn't get any better in terms of capturing high value targets. Come back a little bit, lower level high value targets. Trying to get those guys. But at the other end of it, it's just processing data, reading the news like a madman, trying to collate what is really going on in the Ukraine or whatever it is.
That's so. With that, did you begin focusing on what you were going to do when you left the military? Like when you were kind of done with your tour of duty, at what point did you identify kind of what direction you wanted to go?
So yeah, I guess I'd always been interested in hacking from when I was a kid, really. But when I was I'm 37 now. I was born in 85. So when I was a kid, there wasn't the internet as we know it today. No iPhone, no YouTube. So learning things wasn't as easy. You had to be at least somewhat geographically close to like some sort of hacking area. If you're around, NSA headquarters in the 80s and sat around a few bars, you might be able to meet some people that did some stuff, But I was in Northern Ireland, and that's pretty far removed back then from the cyber landscape for sure. But I was always interested in it. And when I was in the Navy, I knew about those Navy hackery types that broke into secure radio comms. And then when I was in the intelligence corps, I heard about some small group of sergeants and staff sergeants, a few ranks above my pay grade, that were playing around with Backtrack, which is the old version of Kali Linux.
Yep.
And I asked, could I have a chat and maybe go and join that team? But it was really, it was so small. It was like 5 or 6 people. And it was all at that rank level. So I couldn't join, but it gave me the word Backtrack to go and Google. And from knowing that one, I didn't even know that existed, right? From knowing that one word and sticking it in Google, ultimately I ended up where I am today, right? Like that's the chain of events,
That was the intervening event that kind of changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, totally. No, I wasn't, I didn't leave the military and end up like in a cyber job straight away. It took me like 3 years to get into cyber, but it was a slow, and I had no IT background. That's why, it was a slow, steady learning process, regular learning.
What was your first certificate? Like you got one, I think it was a year or two after you got out, or?
Yeah.
Oh no, it looked like
Security Plus.
I was just scanning one of your bios. It was a few years. It was like 3 years after you grabbed your first certificate. We get asked that question all the time, like, where do I start when I'm trying to break in? Like, what was your first one? Was it?
Yeah, Security Plus from CompTIA.
Yeah,
and I read A Plus, the book first
Mhm.
and Network Plus. And
Right.
when I was in the Navy, I did go on a Windows administrator course, but that was like way back in the day. It was literally
Yeah.
using Active Directory, and that was it. There was no real
Right.
admin, not in today's sense.
Good to
And
know. Not really going to get you where you want to go, though. But
no, exactly. So I had a fair understanding from doing web design and things like that in the past, like how websites work and port
yeah.
numbers from doing FTP stuff with websites. I tinkered enough on personal projects to understand what was going on in the Network Plus book. So I just read it. But then I knew I should really sit the Security Plus exam because
Mhm.
that'll bolster your knowledge. In
Yes.
theory, you shouldn't be able to pass Security Plus if you don't know A Plus and Network Plus. It's kind of a
Of
chain
course.
of events, isn't it? In
Yeah.
theory,
Exactly.
I know there'll be some people that do pass it. So yeah, that was the first one, and that's a question I get asked all the time as well. So I have that blog post, like how to break into cyber. I just, for anybody that hits me a load of questions will know. I just ping that back to you with a polite message saying, "Go read this first, and then give me some more questions when you're ready."
So, and then what was your first, after that, what was your first kind of step directly into cyber? What was your first either role or certification? Did the certification come first?
Yeah, the certification came first. I did eLearn Security's EJPT course, which is their junior pen testers course. That was really good because it is a practical, hands-on hacking exam. You do have to hack in, and there's a quiz. It's like 20 questions. Um, Nice choppy audio. How's everybody else's audio? Yeah, it's strange.
I just want to make sure everybody's able to hear.
Maybe if I reduce my video down to 480p as well. Let's see. Let's see how that goes. Is that
No, it's
let me know
still
if
a little choppy.
weird. Very strange. That's the problem with these live streams, isn't it? But at least we can mess around trying to fix it. We can hack into computers, but we can't make audio work.
Well, no, we always need the AV guy to come and grab new cables or something. All right. So am I coming across choppy? I think I'm coming across okay. I'm not hearing it. Okay. Great. Thanks. Well, with leveraging technology, we're crossing the entire ocean. So let's see how Gary bounces back, which I have absolute confidence that he'll be able to. Okay, we're going to have Gary dial back in. So if everybody hangs out for a little bit, we will be right back. And here he is. Let's see what's going on. All right, we're going to be right back real quick. Hang with us, okay? Because we know Gary's got some great stories. So just hang tight. All right, I think we're back.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, it sounds great. Good job.
Okay.
All
Really
right,
weird.
not bad. No, it was
Very
good.
strange. Sorry about that.
I had to find the old. I have all these like templates and stuff. I had to find the old. Hey, we'll be right back. We're having technical problems. Everybody, hang
Need a
on. Don't
banner.
leave. Don't go watch ESPN. Just stay with us now.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully that works. We'll see.
no, it's
We'll
good.
see.
Whatever you did, you fixed it, man. And I was
I
not
just
surprised.
I just
I wasn't
refreshed the
going
page.
anywhere. I believe you. I wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, so
So yeah, we were talking about this, and one thing I want to express for my audience, because we always explain this, because people that listen to our podcast oftentimes own businesses or they work in business, and they're not even necessarily that technical. But they're so fascinated in true crime and cyber crime. They see the news, right? And what happens, at least over here in the US, and I think it happens globally to a large degree, is people say, "Oh, hackers did this. Hackers did that," right? When they're really talking about crime, right? And the
yeah,
truth is it's not equivalent with one another, right?
no,
Hacking in and of itself is like reverse engineering. It's breaking, you see something interesting and you break it down out of curiosity, and you want to understand what the vulnerabilities are so that it can get better, right?
yeah.
Is that a fair statement? I
Yeah,
mean,
pretty much. I mean, like I think the original hacker was like the person trying to build stuff. They were hacking together a tool
yeah,
that does something. It was more about creation.
right.
Nowadays, that's not really the case. But yeah, like, you know, I am a bit of a hacker, but I'm not a bad guy, you know? So,
Exactly,
and
exactly.
I was with my
There are
in-law.
definitely hackers that are bad guys,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah,
So don't get us wrong, but there's bad guys that also hack, and then there
yeah,
are hackers, and then there's like people in the middle, right? And several people that have done this for decades have always explained you don't always wear one hat all the time, right? Sometimes
yeah,
to accomplish one task, you got to switch hats, and that's fine. But really, when we're talking about hackers in terms of the context of ransomware gangs and things like that, we're really talking about organized digital crime, like
yeah,
crime syndicates, right?
yeah.
That's really what we mean. We don't mean the same people that want to learn hacking, right?
Yeah.
When you want to learn hacking, you want to understand a a sector of engineering, reverse engineering, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
I always like to make
Someone
that point because that's
someone in
our
the somebody in the comments said, "Hello, sir. Where can we learn malware like
yeah.
online?" And
I
I
saw that.
naturally, when I see I want to learn malware, I'm thinking, right, this guy wants to learn how to make malware. I don't think he's a bad guy. He's going to use this on someone. He just wants to learn, like, how do I do this? You know?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
more, as soon as you learn how it's done, I mean, think about that. What a powerful intellectual building block to know
Yeah.
how this stuff is done. And then you're reading an article about ransomware and you're like, well, I know how that was made. Like
Yeah.
that is a really that's you have to know that to be able to advise people and how to protect it, how to protect
Exactly.
themselves. Oh yeah, I've done a really poor job of looking at the comments because when you were gone, somebody was like, "Tell me about the books in the background." I'm like, I could have walked through. I could have like entertained people. I've got some great stories back there, but I want to focus on Gary. So let's go back to where we were, my friend. You 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 left the military, entered civilian life, and then what did you do first? Did you like what type of
My
job did you have? Because I think it's always important when people want to enter into cybersecurity or enter into a technical field. What I love about cybersecurity is, are you a hairdresser right now? Are you in the restaurant business? Are you a mechanic? Are you whatever? You could have a cybersecurity degree. Like you can have
yeah,
a
yeah.
career in cybersecurity. Like there's so many people that we've met that have come from all walks of life into this because they have a lot of different motivations, right? They have a desire to serve and protect, right? Because
Mhm.
at the end, that's the heart of cybersecurity defense. Or they have curiosity, engineering. They want the lifestyle, whatever it is. It's a wonderful, wonderful career. So walk us through it. So You're
Yeah.
you're leaving the military, and then where's your
I
mindset back then?
so I looked originally at roles in straight up like civilian street. And I didn't really understand like what types of roles I should be looking for, like intelligence officer for a big company. That
Mm-hmm.
sounds great. I could go and do recon on the competition, but it doesn't really exist anymore. They used to have corporate espionage type people back in the day, not so much nowadays. Uh, and then I met a guy, a recruiter, and he introduced me to a company called Willis Towers Watson. It was called Willis back then. They insured the Titanic and
Yeah,
all the L'Oreal models skin.
yeah. Was it
But
part of
they had
Lloyd? Was it part of Lloyd?
uh, no,
No.
it's opposite the Lloyd's building down in London.
Yep.
But they have a kidnap and ransom wing, and
Very
it was all staffed by ex-military people like me. So I went into that role doing like 12-hour shifts in the SOC, doing the kidnap and ransom work. So I was with people that I could banter with and chat with,
right.
and I was in civilian street. I sort of had the best of both worlds, like a nice sort of decompression from the military, because you know what the military can be like, I'm sure.
Oh,
Um, and that was really nice. But I did that for 9 months, and then in that period, I figured out the types of roles that I could go and do, which is mostly around risk management.
mm-hmm.
So I got into Nationwide, which is the world's biggest building society,
Of
as a
course. Yeah.
risk analyst in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
then from there, where did you like? What experiences did you get there? Like, tell us some of that.
that was invaluable. I was so lucky to get
Mm-hmm.
that role as well because, in the team that I was in, the enterprise risk team, you're sort of looking across like the whole risk division. You're not in the credit team, you're not in some other smaller risk team. You're in the sort of top level one looking across everything. And I wasn't highly experienced compared to the people I was around, but that was awesome for learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that 3.5 year period, I learned everything I know today about risk management, how to manage risk with controls and mitigations and all that sort of stuff. That language of risk
Well,
management in the
that has a
business.
play in every aspect of
Oh,
security.
in cyber, that's massive. Like that, when
Yeah.
I go into an interview with someone
Mm-hmm.
about cyber, I feel so much more confident because I've been in risk.
Yeah.
Because risk is, risk and cyber go hand in hand, and I can
It is.
speak that language to the business, as it's called. So yeah, that was great. And during that role, I did my EJPT, I think. No, I did Security Plus in that role.
Okay.
And in my next role, I did EJPT. And my next role was like a 6-month role. It was like because we moved from the bottom of England up to Edinburgh, where we are today.
Yep.
And I was essentially jobless. Yeah, because my wife took a job. I took a little break. And I hadn't done any hacking certs yet. So I didn't want to apply for cyber roles.
Right.
So I took a job very similar to what I was doing before for 6 months. And then I got the cyber role at another bank. And that was it. The rest is history. It's just, yeah.
And so at one point, you guys moved to Singapore at one point?
Yeah. We, so I did
Walk us through that.
CTI.
How did
Yeah,
you, was that, you had been there, stationed there, or visited there,
no,
back in the Navy, or what drove you?
no, I just got a call, from someone saying, there's a role in Singapore at an organization, a big bank, and would I be interested in applying for the role? I said yes, I would, and spoke to the wife, and she said that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So off we went. We flew the dog and me and the good lady around the world. Did that for almost 2 years. COVID hit at that point. We got pregnant, and then we flew back. And now we're back here, unbelievably, for 2 years. It's crazy. Time's just, when you have kids, time just flies.
Oh, absolutely. So, and then you've done excellent videos and a nice walkthrough for people for your OSCP. So, what's one of the couple of the biggest insights you have from accomplishing that? I mean, you've done a great job of illustrating it for everybody, and for those that, well, for those that don't know, why don't you first explain what that is? A lot of the people that are on live that know you probably already know the story and are well aware of it. But for a lot of the listeners that don't even know what those acronyms mean, walk us
Yeah,
through.
sure. OSCP is, if you've heard of Kali Linux, the company that made Kali Offensive Security, they make the OSCP, which is sort of their flagship course from way back in the day. And it's Offensive Security Certified Professional, but it is actually their sort of lowest level hacking exam. But their lowest level is most training providers medium to almost high level, depending on what provider you go to, because in 24 you've got 48 hours ultimately end to end, but the first 24 hours you got to hack into as many machines as you can. I think there's 5 in the lab, and get a level of access, root for example, or a low privilege user. And then after 24 hours the VPN shuts, and then you've got 24 hours to write the report, and the report needs to be perfect. Someone needs to be able to pick the report up and I should be able to give the report to my wife and say, off you go.
And for her to be able to follow it to a T and
exactly. Yeah, so you can't forget screenshots. If you've missed your screenshots and the VPN's closed, you failed. Even if you hacked everything, you failed.
Wow.
So it is like, it took me a week, my body to reset. Like, it's just a lot. You don't sleep very well that first night or the second night, and you're waiting for the email to come in. It's good. I passed first attempt, which was, I'm glad, because I don't know if I could have done that again. A good friend of mine, he failed the first one and said it again. And like, hats off to people who've done. I see people online on Reddit like 5-6 times. That's expensive, but forget that. It's the toll on your mind. Like, oh yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the tests that go all day, that is something just different. I've had to do that in my career too. It's just unbelievable.
But it's great.
It's a physical, emotional, and then intellectual drain all at the same time.
Yeah, when I looked at some of the other offensive security ones, they do like a wireless pen testing one where you hack Wi-Fi, and it's like a 4-hour exam. I'm like, oh, easy.
You're like, that's easy.
Like, we can do it in 2. It's like it's a bit like being in the military. Once you've done a 36-mile run across the Brecon Beacons, going for a 5-mile run seems like nothing. Almost for the rest of your life, you have that sort of ego kind of play in the back of your head, but it'll catch you out at some stage, I guess.
That's hilarious. So, you've launched Switchfire, you've launched your YouTube channel. What are some of the things you want viewers and subscribers and people to get out of that? Like, what's your cause, your mission? What are some of the things you really want to accomplish?
There's really 2 sides to it that people should see. They'll definitely see one side to it, which is, oh, I'm learning stuff. Yeah. But I also want people to see that if you know stuff, please don't be under the assumption that loads of other people know that stuff. Yeah. There's always some younger version of you from a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago that wants to learn. Like the things that I'm teaching at the minute are the foundational elements, like ultra basic hacking type things. It's almost laughable. Like, you don't see that stuff anymore, but people still need to know it, and it's nice. It's a nice way to teach people the basics, the stepping stones. So don't assume that everybody knows all the things that you know. Teach the you from 5-10 years ago. Yeah, I wish my YouTube channel existed and I was aware of it whenever I was learning, because I wasn't, and things like that weren't really available. Network Chuck and John Hammond, I think their channels didn't start 10 years ago. It was like 6-7 years ago. So and that sort of brings me on to the other side of it. Teach people stuff. Like, it's so good for your professional, and it feels good as well personally, but it's so good for your professional development to teach people things. The best way to learn is to teach, they say.
Well, I think that's absolutely true, because it really makes you verify all your assumptions, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you kind of have these cobwebs in your mind where you're like, well, I just assume this is the case. And then while you're trying to explain it to someone and they're asking questions, you're actually like, well, I don't actually know. Let me go find it. And then it really makes it real and impactful. And sometimes what you were going to teach sometimes changes based on new information, new data points that you've learned.
Yeah, and when you're baking it into a video to be on YouTube forever,
Yeah.
like you have to do your research. Like I don't think I've said anything ridiculous or like completely wrong. If I have, feel people do feel free to call me out and
I'm
I'll do
sure they will
corrections.
let us know as soon as
I'm
we
sure
can.
they will.
I mean,
So yeah, like it's different if you're standing up in a classroom teaching something, but when you're the one recording yourself, you definitely feel like I need to get this right.
yeah.
Yeah, like the first five videos that I did on YouTube were longer, sort of. Uh, I was trying to be a bit more journalism-y,
Hmm.
talk about big stories in interesting ways rather than trying to teach hacking. But it was taking like a month to edit those things. Like
Oh yeah, it takes forever.
in the timeline, those projects are massive. So I wanted to sort of speed it up and get better at making videos. Hence why I do one every week now,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
a bit simpler.
absolutely. Okay, so let's switch gears and let's talk. I want to talk about some true crime.
Mm.
So, you've got a couple great ones from back in the day that have lessons that still are applicable today. But let's talk about today first, and then let's go
Oh,
back. So
yeah.
today, what are some of the biggest issues that are facing a lot of organizations? I know it's a really broad question, but it's something that I see. I listen to a lot of podcasts, I see a lot of YouTube, and it changes all the time. People's perception of what the biggest threats are, and it shifts every couple weeks, it seems. And so there's so much intel out there. I'm trying to always see where the wave is coming from. So walk us through what your sense is.
Yeah, I guess this is a good chance as well for people to understand a bit more about what I do, like as a
Mhm.
CTI, cyber threat intelligence specialist, and with my Intel background and my cyber skills, you stick those two together along with my risk experience, and you end up sort of in CTI land.
Yeah.
And yeah, monitoring the threat landscape is important. I'm a firm believer that most businesses should be threat led. You should be thinking about the threats to the organization before you then go and implement loads of controls. Yeah,
Right.
if if you're a bank, you're probably worried about quite a lot.
Hmm.
You're worried about money walking out the door, for example, or customers being hit, and then that makes you think, well, what controls can we put on customers' devices? What controls can we put internally,
Well,
etc.
yeah, financial institutions have like so many different vectors, right? You have internal corruption that you have to
Yeah,
protect against yourself, right? So there's all these mechanisms and protocols. And then you have physical, right? People walking into banks doing things, the old time bank robbers, but all of those elements. But then you have all of the digital aspects, transactional, as well as where things are stored. So
yeah,
it's
yeah. I
it's
mean,
a very
the
complex landscape.
the, the biggest one for me, I think, and I think this will be the biggest for the future going forward. Really, is ransomware.
Yeah.
It's the buzzword, but for a very good reason. It, if we
It's
look
not
if we
just about the ransom anymore. And I think that's the
Yeah,
issue,
yeah.
right?
If
I mean,
we rewind a little bit just before ransomware and we look
yeah.
at crypto miners,
Yep.
cryptocurrencies, yeah. So hackers used to get access to a system, and this is going back to when crypto was big and profitable up at those peaks levels,
Right.
2017, 18,
Yep.
19, when everybody was very positive about it all.
Yep.
Um, People were spending time hacking into systems to put ultimately what is malware in the system,
Right.
and it's a crypto miner, so it'll try and mine cryptocurrencies. So you put the malware in, it uses up all the computer usage, the CPU and GPU power. So all of a sudden, your audio goes like ours did 10 minutes ago, and your mouse doesn't wiggle, but you make some Bitcoin or whatever, very small
Right.
amounts. But I don't know. I don't really know how it happened. All of a sudden, ransomware came onto the scene. And ransomware is pretty old. Like it's just encryption software. Yeah,
Right.
that's all it is.
Yep.
And that's a good thing. Like we need encryption. This is an encrypted connection right now.
Right.
You know, that's a good thing. But when you do it the way
Not about that's why I kind of wanted to reset the talk level about the definition of a hacker, because it's not about the act or the technology, it's about the intent behind it.
Exactly.
Right?
And yeah, so
don't go blaming the knife manufacturer for either for somebody that stabs somebody versus makes a Michelin steak, right? It was the example given us earlier.
Total sidebar, we probably won't get into this too much, but there's some, if people want to Google this, like start looking at the child exploitation stuff that Apple is doing, and I think other companies are doing it. You'll hear a lot of governments talking about, oh, we can't have end-to-end encryption because people are sharing bad photographs of kids, yeah,
right,
and we want to stop that. So please turn off all encryption.
That's not the
don't turn off all encryption. That's a terrible. I agree that it's bad that those pictures are being shared, but there are other solutions. It's an interesting one for people to go and research. But when you look at the ransomware stuff now, like it's crazy. Like the crypto mining stuff didn't mature. People just installed it. They got their money and that was it. The ransomware stuff has gone through multiple iterations of maturity. And we look at Lockbit, the most advanced ransomware group today. You know, they have their own bug bounty program. If I identify the head of another ransomware group and I tell Lockbit, they give me $1 million.
$1 million.
$1 million. It's on their website. That's what they will give you if you can identify the leader of another ransomware group. That's crazy. You know?
So it's on their website on the dark web.
Yeah. And Lockbit have a clear web site as well. I think it's still up. I wouldn't recommend going there.
I was going to say, easy.
Yeah.
I'm always careful because whenever we've gone on certain sites and gone down rabbit holes, I'm always cautious what we let listeners do, because some of these people are like, "Oh, this is great," and then all of a sudden they're like, "I'm like, please don't do that."
Yeah, like I saw on Twitter. I think it was this week, VMware ESXi escape. So I have a MacBook Air here and it has VMware installed on it. And that's what I run my Kali Linux on. So it's in a virtual machine. So people think, oh, if you use a virtual machine, you'll be fine. But this week, there's a exploit to escape the virtual machine. So if you clicked on the wrong thing online, don't just trust that virtual machine is going to keep you safe and sandboxed, because that's not how it works.
So let's talk about Lockbit a little bit. We've had some conversations recently with some people that have worked with U.S. intelligence, that have been in communication with them. I mean, it's clearly one of the most sophisticated ransomware groups of the day, and they've got Lockbit original, right? Like the original recipe, and then you had Lockbit 2.0, where they were increasing not only the product, but the processes, the customer engagement aspect, right? And now they're at Lockbit 3.0, where not only things are far more advanced, but the ransoms have become double and triple extortion levels, right? I mean, it's quite aggressive. So let me ask you, that's the most damaging threat that we're facing, and in some industries they might have more issues than others for certain threats. I understand that, but in general, we're talking high level ransomware and advanced organized crime gangs like Lockbit. Have the defenses, the things that people and organizations can do to protect themselves, have those really changed?
It's a good question, and I use security tools, every day as part of my day job, and they're great. Don't get me wrong. Like if in doubt.
Well, as soon as they make one that actually is like the silver bullet and we can all buy it,
Yeah,
then we'll all be out of a job and everything will be fine and there won't be.
yeah,
But we all know that
exactly.
will never happen, right?
No,
So, so walk us through like has the best practices
that
changed or have they not evolved enough for the newer threats?
that's the bit that falls down. I think like
Yeah,
having an EDR, an endpoint detection response system.
absolutely.
Anybody doesn't know, that's like a really fancy antivirus, yeah.
Yeah,
And having one of those is a good thing, right?
yeah,
But
absolutely.
if the right person comes across, they can just bypass it.
Sure.
Just Google it. Just type in EDR bypass. You'll
Right.
find all the results. All the vendors tested, bypassed, no problem. Now, can anybody do it? No. You
No.
have to know how to do these things, and yeah, you have to figure it out on a case by case basis. You might not be able to unhook that organization's EDR, and you might get caught, and then
Mhm.
you have to burn your infrastructure and withdraw, and it becomes complex. But where Lockbit and these gangs really work well is that they run the affiliate programs, and this is where it gets clever. Like back in the
Well,
day,
this is where it's organized crime, and this is what
yeah,
I'm trying to understand. So, and this is where I'm trying to explain to people that, as ransomware as a service has developed, right? We've gotten
yeah,
into organized crime clearly, and
yeah,
and with that comes a lot of leverage, right? The core group can control the path of where these things go, but as people get caught or picked off, they are insulated because half of them don't even know each other, right? They
yeah,
engage all of these people to execute a task, pay them handsomely, but there's no direct connection. So therefore, you can't really you don't get caught because you don't even know who to go after. And that's
yeah.
one of the in terms of law enforcement, that's one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, the FBI ran that operation with the phones. I can't remember what the phone was called, but basically they ran these criminal phone networks.
Mm-hmm.
So criminals were buying these custom Android or BlackBerry, I can't remember the name, devices, and they thought it was safe. It wasn't. It was owned by the FBI. It was ran by
Right.
the FBI, and they just wrapped the whole thing up. Hundreds of arrests all across the world. Beautiful operation.
Yep.
Stuff like that always like blows my mind. There's it reminds me of the crypto AG scandal, the Swiss company that was actually owned half by the German intelligence, half by the CIA, and they were selling cryptography equipment all around the world that was actually faulty. It didn't work, so the NSA could intercept it. Oh, we've got someone jumping in our chat.
Yeah, it's just bots, so I'm just blocking them.
Gotcha.
That's always great. It's
Private
not.
dating, huh? You wouldn't
Yeah,
want to date me.
I'm not posting it on the screen here. It's okay.
The yeah, so that's what I find fascinating. Like the trust that we placed in technology
Mm-hmm.
is crucial, but it's also our biggest flaw. That trust. Should I trust the latest iPhone? Probably not. You know.
Right.
And then you look at the
Yet
Chinese cup where they have
95%
that.
of Americans that buy it and North Americans, right, do trust it because they don't understand
Yeah,
the inherent risks involved. And so what
it's
we have to focus on in terms of being in my role and our group is helping organizations, helping families, helping individuals is really the awareness training, like how to keep people aware of this because the rate and pace that the organized crime development is not just the development of the advancement in technology, but the rate and pace of it is just it's so prolific. It's advancing so quickly, and
yeah,
people are still learning. Like, don't click on the link in the email. I'm like, holy
yeah,
cow! Like, it's
yeah.
really we're far behind.
But there's things like hey.com, as in hey, HEY.
Yeah,
It's $99 a year, which is pretty expensive for email, right? Given that most email's free.
right.
But it's you have to authorize it, and it's beautiful. Like it's the best looking,
Yeah, I've
coolest.
seen it. It's really good, and it's
Yeah,
got a
yeah.
lot of safety built into it.
You can't if you email me, I have to authorize you to be allowed to email me. So you have to approve it's whitelisted.
Right.
You have to approve every sender. So, why does iCloud not do that or Gmail not do that? It
Right.
can't be hard. Like although when I open my iCloud, I have next to no junk in my inbox. When I
Right.
open my Gmail, it's a different story, and I have no idea why. Like what, So it makes me wonder what Apple and Google and things are doing at that level. But
Well, and because part of it is what's the driving force, right? When the driving force is ad revenue and things like that, they want open communications. They want the vendors to be able to get to you, because
yeah,
if they can't get to you, then they can't sell the space in the ads too, right?
yeah,
That's kind
true.
of part
Yeah.
of it.
There's usually a financial motivation behind most things.
Yeah. So walk us through. I love some of these stories that you have. So let's get to. I want to hear the one about the data breach that took down the Air Force.
This is good. That's this one. If anybody's wondering, I do have a YouTube video on this, the $1 billion
Yeah, the
spy.
$1 billion spy. I mean, that is
David E. Hoffman.
Yeah.
It's a really cool story. Basically, so we all know, 1991, Gulf War I, America went in and absolutely like just smashed the Iraqi Air Force. Like basically America had no losses and the Iraqis had like almost 50 or whatever. It was a game changer. And in 1991, that happened because of what happened in 1977. Some guy put a note through the window of a parked car at a gas station in Moscow and said, "Hey, I think you work for the Americans. I'm an engineer in Russia, and I want to give you some data. This is the gas station where it happened." And that guy was a big Soviet engineer, and the data that he leaked over, that's him, Tolkachev. Both pictures are him, young and older. He just took photographs of documents, which is, it sounds archaic, but actually it's one of the best ways today to steal from a company, because if I'm here working from home, well, not even screenshots, literal photos, because if you take a screenshot today, a lot of companies put the block in, they have the gray window. But if you take a photograph,
so they would know that a screenshot was, they'll either bar the screenshot or they'll know there'll be a trace that the screenshot is.
Yeah, exactly. But if you take a photograph of it, then, and with all the text, in the iPhone and I think on Android as well, you got the text detection nowadays. You can actually pull the text as out of the picture. Like it's really powerful. So it's funny that something from 50 years ago is sort of back again as a big threat. We obviously don't see much of that in the world, but like this guy had hundreds of rolls of film that he was walking out of the engineering labs in Moscow, bringing them over in a briefcase.
This was a Moscow engineer working for the FSB back then, or he was in the USSR working in Moscow?
Yeah, in Moscow, just working for a big engineering company that designs all of the radar systems for all the planes. Okay. And because he knew how they worked, he could take all the photographs of the documents in a toilet or back in his office on a little small camera, and he would then give the film, the physical film, in briefcases or in bags to his handlers on the ground. And obviously there's an element of tradecraft in trying to deliver those packages to ultimately the CIA. And I think he had millions of dollars in the States in safekeeping. I think Uncle Sam has some of that these days, but he did ask for medicine and music and things for his son. His son liked records, LPs and things. So yeah, he was mostly motivated, and this is where it gets interesting. Like you look at the motivations when you do intelligence work: money, ideology, coercion, ego. MICE is the acronym, and he was really, ideologically motivated because his wife's parents were basically executed by Stalin.
So
back in the purge. Yeah, so that pushed him on to do, so Stalin killed some people, and years later, America wins in Iraq, wiping out an air force. Like the
Right.
ripple of that is incredible. Think of,
It is.
it's amazing. Really good
But
story.
yeah, and it's not the only one like it, but it's so true, right? Like there are so many, even corporate espionage. We have lots of big pharmaceutical medical companies here in the United States, and there are so many true crime stories where somebody's spouse or father back in the day was fired by one of these big pharmaceutical companies, and the family struggled, right? And the son grows up, has a hard time, but eventually gets into the same field or related field, and then starts and goes and works there, right? And gets some job and starts to use things like rubber ducky and other things that you hear about, where they're able to, these key loggers, where they're able to put something in a jump drive and in 8 seconds get terabytes of data that's intellectual property design. It's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and they'll go and not sell it on the dark web for their own profit. They'll go give it to the competitor. They'll go give it to the rival pharmaceutical company. It's why you always hear, hey, somebody has this great invention, but then the competitor has it too. And you're like, do they both have engineering teams and design teams working at the same time?
Yeah.
There's so much, like, and what's interesting is it stems from like a personal issue that happened 25 years earlier, right?
Yeah.
Or longer. Those arcs of those stories are just phenomenal.
I think that the safe bet is just to be nice to people.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. It's kind of like we should do a story on like karma and cybersecurity, right? Karma and cybercrime. Right?
There's probably a correlation,
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and like you can have our evil be the poster child of that, right? Like you get too greedy, like Russia will take you down, maybe. So that's really good. Hey, so I want to get to how you're helping people get into cybersecurity, and even if they're in it, how you're helping them advance, because you really have got some outstanding approaches. So one of the things I loved is, there's technical aspects. You've got, Kali Linux, how to learn it, how to install it, all of that. You've got certain aspects on how to take some of these certifications, and I'll direct everybody to your YouTube channel. That is just incredible insight. But what I love is, once you understand the technical aspect, equally as important, I would argue, if not more, is the interview, managing the job, and things like that, right? And you talk about the STAR method in interviewing. Walk us through that, because it's exactly true. I'm coming from law background, finance background, stocks, trading, things like that, into cybersecurity. That was my arc, and it's the exact same thing. So walk us through the STAR method.
Yeah, so it's not my method.
No,
nothing that I teach.
It's what you write about, and I think by you applying it in the cybersecurity context, it's really, really useful.
Yeah, so STAR is situation, task, action, and result, and basically it's a way of you remembering those 4 letters, those four words in the middle of an interview when someone asks you a question. So tell me about a time where you've had to deal with deliver under high pressure stakes, and you would think in your head,
they get nervous. They're like, well, where do I start? How do I start?
Exactly. Yeah. And if you start,
and they'll talk if you start rambling, the interview's arc will start to drain.
And the interviewer is also aware of STAR usually.
Yes,
like
of course.
Typically someone interviewing is a little bit more senior. You wouldn't put some entry-level person to go and do an interview. And if you are more senior, you've probably come across STAR. So in that example, delivering under high pressure situation, I'd been up for 24 hours in the ops center. We were dealing with a DDoS attack, and we really needed to get some malware across to the vendor, but our network was down. Task. I took the task upon myself to get the malware onto a USB drive and we physically drove it across to our vendor to analyze it. Yeah, and that
And make it
task and that
concise, right? It's a
yeah,
full
and that
arc of a story. You talk about the situation, talk about what task
yeah.
was needed, what action was taken, and then what the result was. It's a perfect arc.
Exactly. And then back, the result is we managed to get the malware to the vendor to analyze, and it gave us an IP address, whatever. Yeah, that's a wacky example, but you get the idea. It'll keep you on track. And you could practice this with, a family member, friend, or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And those types of questions, they tend to be the more behavioral questions. If you Google behavioral interview questions, they're not technical. You're not going to do star if someone says, how does a DDoS attack work? Right. You're going to tell them how a DDoS attack works. These questions are more about you and your behaviors and how you behave. So there's loads of places online where you can see like 50 examples of behavioral questions. Go practice that, because that's the game changer in an interview. If you're calm and prepared. I love interviews. Like I think about them in a different way than most people I come across. I imagine you're quite similar to me, David, just from the vibe that I get from you. Like we're both here as equal partners. You're interviewing me, but I'm also interviewing you, by the way. Like
absolutely.
Don't think this is one-sided.
Exactly.
I came to the table to see if there's a chance for me to collaborate with your company, and you're going to give me money and I'm going to give you skills. It's a trade. I don't think, well, please give me the job. I don't think like that. And I think that gives you a little bit of an edge.
Well, and that's a great point, especially today, right? With at least a year ago, right, when the job market is so tight. I mean, there've been a lot of layoffs lately, globally, and especially in the States. But in general, I mean, I've hired probably 1,000 people, like hundreds and hundreds of people. I've interviewed hundreds of people, and it's interesting how when the market changes, right? There are some times when I'm so like I have hundreds of applicants, right? And so the interviews are a certain cadence. I'm looking for a specific thing, right? And I'm really like in those scenarios, that STAR method is critical, because I want to know how have you solved something that I know you're going to face in the past. And if they just kind of ramble and it's like I don't even understand the answer, right? As opposed to somebody that can speak it concisely and operate that methodology. So interviewers absolutely understand that STAR method as well.
Definitely.
But you're interviewing that organization just as much. Always remember that. I know when you're trying to break into a field, you have this feeling of desperation where you really want the freaking job, right? I mean, we've all been there, but don't buckle to that, because you're going to give, in most cases, excuse me, a lot more to that organization than they may even give to you. So really pick the right one. Look for people that care about their people, right? And to me, it's a sense of understanding what business is all about. Like businesses are 100% made of people at the end of the day. And so we've got to really believe in the people that we want to work with and work for, and ask open-ended questions. I mean, if something that I always give everybody is, if you've never read Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, or he's got a master class, it is a phenomenal way of interviewing, speaking to people, building your personal brand. It applies to all of it, right? It applies to asking questions, open-ended questions, listening actively. When you hear something interesting, right? Think of it almost like lines of text coming across where you could double click on something, right? Somebody says something that's interesting. Go, so you said that. Walk me through that. Tell me about it. Start with words like what and how, and open-ended questions, and really get them to open up, because then you'll be learning through that interview process as well. It's really,
and if people are trying to break into the industry, that honesty around you're trying to break in, try and come across as some sort of pro.
Right.
Just be upfront, and if you don't have a GitHub repository where you're doing, I don't know, you're putting projects, Python scripts or something up that you're learning, or if you don't have some sort of confidence in your own body of work that you can say, yeah, I'm really keen, look at all this stuff that I've done that's extra, then you probably shouldn't be at the interview. Like, you need to be confident in your own ability to really deliver in this space. So like I always say to people, build something, have a blog. If you're going to do CTI, sorry, David, I missed the name of the book. Mark's just looking for the name of
Mark,
that book.
I just saw that. There's a question from a listener. Mark, sorry, David, I missed the name of the book that you put in the chat. If possible, I will explain to you. It is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Phenomenal book. He actually has a masterclass, and he is a former FBI hostage negotiator. And he now trains sales teams. He trains people on all aspects of interviewing in business scenarios, employers, employees. The methodology it just works. It's just really, really effective. And, it elicits information and makes people feel good. Like it's just the way of effective listening and effective communication. It's really, really powerful stuff. So not sponsored in any way. So, but just want to share really things that have just changed the trajectory of my team and people that I've met as well. So
I'm gonna have to read it.
Yeah, very, very, very cool. So you've talked about a couple things. When people are wanting to install Kali Linux, one of the things I wanted to ask you, explain to the listeners, what is Kali? Let's do basic stuff. Explain to us why they would want to understand Kali Linux and what it is. And then do they need a separate device to install it in, or are there risks in just installing it on your regular laptop?
You can install it on your regular laptop. These days, it's pretty cool the ways that you can install Kali. You can actually, I've got some USB sticks with Kali on it, so you can have the operating system on a USB, plug it in, restart the computer, but choose the USB drive as the boot, and then it's just running off the USB stick. It's nuts.
Yeah.
I have it on both of my computers, my Macs that I use. There's no real dramas with installing it, but just back to what I said earlier, like still do be cautious. If you're going to go into the dark web and like if you're going to download malware off VX Underground or some of these malware sites where that's a thing, be very, very careful, because it is possible to escape out of the Kali Linux or any VM if you're not configured appropriately. And I would say even if you are configured right, still be careful. What Kali is a free open source Linux distribution that comes with all the tools that you would want when you start to hack, pretty much. Yeah. So whenever I download a fresh one, I run a script that I wrote that brings in loads of extra tools, but pretty much out of the box, it has loads of tools that you would like to start with to learn to hack. And obviously learning that is not just hacking, really. There are elements of blue team defensive stuff in there. Wireshark, for example, where you can look at PCAP files, network traffic files, and try and analyze what's going on. There's loads of forensics tools in there. But when I think of it, I just think of the offensive stuff because that's what I do mostly on it.
Right. So I always like to leave listeners with good pieces of best practices or advice. So let's talk about something that a lot of people that aren't hackers, that aren't higher level advanced engineers, that are in the business world, right? The vast majority of people that might listen to my aspect of this discussion. Let's talk about cookies, because it is a question that people keep asking me. They always ask me about MFA, multi-factor authentication, and cookies, right? So you wrote something, or you had some discussion on they're even selling MFA cookies these days. You can bypass MFA. So on the dark web, you're able to like buy MFA cookies. Can you walk us through that? Like, what do we know about that?
Yeah, I don't think it's buying MFA cookies so much, but it's more about like session cookies and like authentication cookies. So whenever you log into a browser or log into a website, you get hit with a cookie. And
Yep.
if I can steal that cookie, I can then just replay that from my browser potentially, and I'll become you. Yeah, I'll be logged in as you. There are mitigations for these things that they can implement on the server, but it's a known attack. What I wrote about recently was Evil Go Fish, which is there's a tool called Go Fish, which is for sending phishing emails. The problem is when you send the phishing email, you get the credentials, you steal the person's username and password, fine. But what about the two-factor authentication?
Right.
So you have to run another service for that. And there's a couple of different ones. And one is called Evil Jinx 2. I don't know if I'm saying that properly.
What does that do?
That handles the MFA pickup. So when someone puts in the 6-digit code into the little boxes, it ultimately runs that back through a proxy and back. So you got the username, password, and the 6-digit code. Ta-da! But
So
Evil Go
rather than
Fish,
sending it to the victim, it's going to send it to the attacker.
yeah, and Evil Go Fish packages both of those tools together as one tool. So now it's easier to do it. You got less work involved. So, and we've seen a lot of
When
MFA
people go to
type.
web, no, go ahead.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of MFA type attacks recently. Uber, Cisco.
MFA fatigue,
Microsoft.
where people just get
MFA,
tired of
yeah.
always being pinged, and then they eventually just they get a ping on WhatsApp, and they go, "Oh, this is IT, so you might as well just click it." And then for some reason, they think their IT department's going to talk to them on WhatsApp. I don't know why, but apparently they fall for that, and then they approve it, and then they're in. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's all done via the push notifications, like on Duo Authenticator. But that's brought this topic to light a bit more. And now that I see, and this is kind of the CTI hat on again, we're seeing more multi-factor, people just getting around it through social engineering, which is bad. But now we've also got tools like Evil Go Fish, which makes it easier to do the technical parts of it, where you're not doing fatigue, you're doing the other aspect, the actual hack. So yeah, it's but
that's actually
your
leveraging
point about
the technology, not just the social engineering part, not fooling the people, but leveraging the actual coded technology.
Totally. And it's called initial access brokers, IABs.
Yep,
so
IABs.
And this is how you
We've talked about that in other episodes. So IABs, for those who have listened to those other episodes, those are the initial access brokers. They get access to organizations, and then they sell that access because they themselves don't want to go and do the actual execution of whatever it might be, right? Ransomware, whatever, right?
Yeah, that's it. They're distancing themselves, like a malware author will distance himself or herself potentially from the person who actually runs the malware, a bit like the ransomware affiliate programs. Initial access brokers on the dark web would sell those cookies, for example. So you would buy that and maybe go and set up your Evil Go Fish as well, just to have a go on that front, and then try and compromise an organization, deploy some ransomware, make the news when you get arrested.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what should people do when they go to websites and they ask for accept all cookies, right? Every website that they go to here in the States and in North America, it's accept all cookies. People are in a rush. They just want to get to the friggin' article. They just want to read it. So they just click accept all cookies. Yeah. That's not a good idea, I would take.
Yeah. I mean, most of those cookies are for like ad tracking networks, but it can be used by nation states to track people doing things. It's quite complex. There's quite a lot of things involved in pulling that off. But if you're a nation state and that's your only focus, you'll do it, right? Like, nation states are hitting journalists with cookies and tracking. That's a real thing. Right. I would say reject all, because it doesn't benefit you really to be tracked more.
Right.
You can
Just
get
the
a
absolute minimum so that you can get to the content, but don't err on the side of convenience and accept all. Always reject all, or just keep the functional ones, right? There's like marketing ones, there's ad tracking, and there's some other ones. Just keep only the functional ones, or just reject all and still see if you can still access it.
Yeah, I use a plugin for Safari called Hush, which is a little extension which works most of the time. I would say 95% of the time. I don't see any pop-ups for cookies, and it automatically knows how to reject everything through the extension, which is nice. I'm sure there's got to be loads of those for Chrome as well.
Oh yeah.
But I think there's a bit of progress being made around trying to standardize what these cookie pop-ups look like. I'm sure I saw something maybe a few months ago on YouTube, people talking about the industry trying to move to like make it all the same, consistent across the board, because there's loads of different people that sell different cookie bars and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be a good move when it happens. At least we'll all be clicking no in the same place.
Yeah. Hey, we've got a question from a listener circling back to the career aspect. Andrea asks, "Hi guys, Gary, can you tell us, please, based on your experience, which cybersecurity job role every security professional have to work in on his career ladder?" So, is there a specific job role that is needed along the way?
I don't think so.
Question. I don't think so.
Yeah, I got into, well, I didn't get involved, but there was I put a post up a while back on LinkedIn about you don't need to know how to program computers to work in cyber.
Right.
And that's just a fact, right? Because I know people who can't program and they work in cyber. So that's it. It only takes one person to make that true. Right. Now, should you learn it? Probably. Like it's good. But like, if I was 45 and trying to break into cyber as a new career, and kids, and am I gonna have the time to really like invest? I'm working a day job, I've done all this extra study to do cyber, and now you're saying go and learn to program computers. You don't need to do that. People don't have the energy to learn all these things all the time. And it's kind of the same for what thing should everyone do. Should everyone be in the SOC so they all understand how the SOC works? I mean, that's great if you can do it, but who can do that? Like, no one can do that, Right. I don't think there's one thing that we all need to do. I think get involved and be keen to learn something every day. That's the one, no matter whether you're in governance, risk and compliance, or you're on the front line of a red team or on the blue team, or doing strategy at the management level, learning new things every day is like the most important thing that we all need to do. And that's not a job, that's just a thing. So yeah, there's no one job that I would direct you to say you have to start on the help desk. You see this all the time. Go get a help desk job. No, you don't have to get a help desk job. I didn't get a help desk job.
Right.
So, you don't have to get one. Yeah, that would be my take on it. But
excellent.
Everybody will peddle their own agenda.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, hey, Gary Ruddell, thank you so much. People that have been watching and listening and asking us great questions, thank you so much for attending as well. This absolutely won't be the last time we speak. And
thanks, David.
Excellent insight, my friend. That was really, really good. So next time we talk, let's even go down a deeper dive on a good true cybercrime story. We
can jump
into
something juicy.
There's so many lessons in them. Like they apply to business, organization. Like when we have conversations around there, we learn so many things that apply right directly to our personal lives. So Gary, thank you so much. We really, really
thank you, David.
Really appreciate it, my friend.
And thanks everybody for watching, everybody who asked questions.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. We will talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Hi, Cybercrime Junkies. Thanks for listening.
Got a question you want us to address on an episode? Reach out to us at cybercrimejunkies.com. We explore why cybercrime grows daily, how it is funded, productized, and organized, how to protect yourself, and where cybercrime goes to hide. And thanks for being a cybercrime junkie.